Hi, and welcome back to this week's Parsha Shir on Sefer Maayan Beit Hashoeva. I'd like to share with you two short pieces that Rav Schwab explains on this week's Parsha towards the beginning of the Parsha. At the very beginning, the Torah introduces us to the concept of the Machzis HaShekel, the half-shekel coin that was donated by every Jew to the Mishkan. Pasuk says, Ze yisnu kol aver al pekudim, machatzis HaShekel b'shekel HaKodesh. Everyone who was counted had to give the half-shekel coin to the Mishkan. Amru Chazal. Chazal tell us in Masechah Shkalim, Lefi shechatu ba'egel b'machzis hayom yisnu machzis hashekel. The reason why it was designated they should specifically give a half shekel was somehow to atone for the chet ha'egel. The giving of the shekel was meant as a kapara for the chet ha'egel. And the reason why it was a half shekel that had to be given as the kapara was because somehow they were sinning with the egel b'machzis hayom. They sinned with the egel at halfway through the day, and therefore they should atone for that by giving half a shekel. So there's a connection between shekel and egel, kapara for the sin, and there's a connection between the halves. Since the sin was committed with a half, the kapara had to be done through a half as well. The question is, what exactly does that mean? What are the halves here that are being spoken about, and what do they signify? Venir levar, says Rav Schwab, here we could explain. Shebeyos ha'adam nivra im shnei yitzarim. Because a human being, he says, is created with two yetzers, with two inclinations, yetzer tov and yetzer hara. Hare tamid yesh belivo tzad tov hamoshcho likras HaKadosh Baruch Hu, u'umazeh yetzer hara moshcho la'over al ritzon kona. There are always two instincts, two pieces of our personalities and of our emotions pulling us in different directions. One which is the Yetzer Tov, the good side of ourselves that is pulling us towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a relationship with Him, and the other side which is pulling us towards the evil, towards the side of violating the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if a person's not careful, they could be easily swayed to the bad side from the good side. They could easily become transformed from a tzaddik to a rasha. It's an interesting concept in and of itself. The idea that we're created with two yitzarim, with two inclinations that are constantly in tension and constantly at battle with one another, that's interesting in and of itself. The idea being described here by Rav Schwab, which is not initiated by him but explained by him, that they are so tenuous that in a moment you could be pulled over from one side to the other, is also interesting. It's described by the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva. He says we should always view ourselves mechza zakai mechza chayav, following the Chazal, which says the same thing. We should always view ourselves as half innocent and half guilty. And at any given moment, one particular act can throw you onto the side of Zakai or towards the side of Chayav, towards the innocent side or the guilty side, towards the good side or the bad side. The same concept is being described by Rav Schwab here. If we look at ourselves as two Yitzarim, not only should we view them as two Yitzarim constantly in tension, but we should imagine them, of course they're not, we should imagine them as totally equal, half and half, 50% and 50%, exactly. So that the line between them is so thin that one could easily bleed into the next, which goes in both directions. One could easily be swayed so that the Rasha side bleeds into the Tzaddik side, or, on the positive note, if you are a Rasha, if you're leaning towards negative behavior, you could easily bleed it back and have the Tzaddik side bleed into the Rasha side and overtake it. So the line is so permeable, the line is so thin, that you could easily be swayed in one direction or the other. The whole idea of the Machzis HaShekel was to come to atone for our souls, for the piece of our souls that is mistaken. So it's quite symbolic to give half a shekel. In giving the half shekel in order to attain atonement, one reminds themselves that on the inside as well, there's really only half to atone for. That even if they view themselves as a terrible person, as an evil person, a person who's committed so many sins, so they're coming to atone for that by the giving of this Machzis HaShekel, they should be reminded that inside they're not totally bad. They still have an entire half that's good. That they are giving the Machzis HaShekel because they only need to be mechaper, they only need to atone for half of their Yetzer, the Yetzer Hara portion, because the Yetzer Tov is always intact. Even if they don't see it, even if it's not coming to the fore, even if it's not as strong, that half still exists. That's the symbolism of the half shekel. But still, we have to understand why that half shekel is somehow correlated to the Chet HaEgel being done at Mechza Shel Yom, at halfway through the day. So he explains, Kach ir lavosenu she'ad chatzos hayom hayu b'madrega shel paska zehu masan, ve'ein malach hamavet sholei bahem, u'bein rega miyad achar chatzos, ki ra'u ki boshesh Moshe, pirush she'agia sof hashah shishis lo yara Moshe min ahar, nafli mimadrega zo shel tzad tov l'tzad hasheni shel yitzer hara, ad kedei kach shayu yecholim lavod le'egel masecha, u'lahachlif es hanesev nasev v'nishma shel anochi Hashem Elokecha le'ele lo'ach Yisrael. So the reason why Chazal described the sin of the golden calf happening at Mechza Shel Yom halfway through the day is to further the same analogy. Just like our souls are half and half good and half bad, and or half evil inclination, half good inclination. So too the symbolism of Mechza Shekel, half a shekel because it correlates to the atonement that is needed only for half of our personality. But so too, if we're imagining this on a larger scale, not on a personal scale, but a national scale, the reason why this grave mistake of Chet HaEgel is described as Mechza Shel Yom, half of the day, is so that we could imagine for ourselves that like the Jewish people are hanging in the balance. At that half point of the day, they could have easily gone to one side or to the other. And they saw Boshesh Moshe Laredet, Moshe was delayed, and so they jumped that line and went over to the side of Ra, and the catastrophe of Chet HaEgel ensues, to the point where we understand how they could have flipped so dramatically from Nasev and Nishma, Kabbalah Torah, direct revelation, to worshipping an Egel. The way it happened, says Rav Schwab, is very simple. It's like the flip of a switch. It's the permeable, tiny line in between the Yitzhar Tov and Yitzhar Ra. That's how this happens. It happened on a national scale. It could happen on a personal scale. That's just how permeable that line is. Mechza al Mechza. Mechza Shel Yom. 6 hours in the day was the defining mark. They could have gone on this side or on this side. They jumped the fence to the bad side. The reason we give half shekel is because the half shekel is reflective of our half neshama, of the Yetzer Hara piece of our neshama. And if the kapara, the atonement gained by the Machzah Shekel, is not just a personal one, but a national atonement for the Chet HaEgel, so too, on a national scale, we imagine ourselves Mechza al Mechza, Yitzhar Tov, Yitzhar Ra, and therefore the half shekel is coming to atone for the Mechza, for the half Yitzhar Hara in Am Yisrael, which occurred at Mechza Shel Yom, halfway through the day, on that day when the Chet HaEgel was perpetrated. So all the halves align themselves, again, with the idea behind it being just how delicate a balance we find ourselves in, how the tension is so permeable. And in addition, I think what gives us pause is the level of responsibility of being careful that comes with, because at any second you could fall over to the side of the Ra, but also the level of opportunity it affords us that at any second you could cross back over to the side of the Tov. One last idea that Rav Schwab shares here in the second piece. After the idea of the Machzah Shekel and the prohibition of counting the Jewish people, the Torah goes on to describe the Shemen HaMishcha, the special anointing oil that had to be created. And the pasuk says, "Ve'ata kachcha b'samim rosh mor deror chamesh meos." You should take for the oil for the head more deror. That was one of the ingredients necessary for the anointment oil. Famous Gemara in Chulin says, the famous Gemara in Chulin asks the question, this Parshat Tisa usually falls after Purim. This year, because it's a leap year, it falls after Purim Katan, but still a couple of weeks away till Purim. But normally it falls around the Purim time. And we look at this pasuk Mor Deror, and the Gemara in Chulin famously asks, where do we find Mordechai min HaTorah? Mordechai min HaTorah minayin. So where do we find a reference to Mordechai in the Torah, even though Mordechai lived much, much later in the time of the Persian exile? The Gemara answers, Dichsiv Mor Deror, because we have this pasuk in our Parsha, which says that the ingredient in Shemen HaMishcha was Mor Deror. Metargaminan, and the Aramaic translation is Mira Dachya. Rashi seems to reiterate the same thing, and Rav Schwab says, "Adayin tzarich biur lama nimshal dafka limin b'samim zeh sheshmo mor deror." The whole analogy here is strange. How could we look for reference for Mordechai in the Torah? So it's question number one. What exactly is the correlation the Gemara is trying to make? Secondly, if we are trying to hang our hat on the reference to Mordechai in the Torah, how is mor deror associated? And third, what do we need the addition of the Targum say Maradachya when we already have the words mor deror in in the pasuk. V'nira shine milas duror, hu inyan shel shichror. We know that the word duror is representative of the concept of freedom, like tzipor dror or kratem dror in the Yovel year. V'chofshius, it's an idea of being free from any encumbrances. V'imken lefi pshuta yolanu lefarish mor duror, shehu min esev shishmon mor, v'nikra duror Hashem shu gadol b'chol makom, v'hu davar chafshi bilti mugbal. If mor is some kind of spice, myrrh, more is some kind of spice being put in the Shemen HaMishcha, then the word duror is meant to qualify the fact that more, this herb, this spice, is something that is free. What does it mean it's free? It's free to grow. It grows anywhere. It just expands to here, to there. It's unencumbered. Bilti mugbal. Ulahoti mizeh, mefarash hatargum shel mira dachya. What the added level that the Targum adds to it in the translation of it is mira, which is the translation of myrrh, but duror, which is freedom, he translates as dachya, which is related to pure, zach. Haresha dror hu lashon tahara. What we learn from the Targum is that dror doesn't only mean unencumbered and free, but also pure. And why are they related? Because, of course, pure means unencumbered or unrelated to or unrestricted by impurities. So once you get rid of impurities, you become free. So purity and freedom are related, but they seem to be two different levels. Klomar chovshi v'naki mikosig v'dofi. Free, pure is free from any impurities. So now how do we relate that back to Mordechai? Zohai ta'avodas Mordechai begalus parash. This quality of mor devor and maradachya were the qualities that were represented in the character of Mordechai in his behavior in the Persian exile. Shelo haya doeg amash Yisrael ayonusinim b'shibud she'ein ze me'akev lahem kol kach ba'avudasam es Hashem kimitzuva aleihem. Even in the midst of the galus, even in the midst of the exile, when they had all kinds of stresses of living under foreign dominion and foreign rule and foreign culture upon them, nevertheless, Mordechai viewed himself and his nation as unencumbered, as chofshi, as duror, as people who could be bilti mugbal, who could achieve anything, especially in avodas Hashem. They didn't have to limit their observance of the mitzvahs that Hashem had put upon them just because they were living in exile. They were free to observe as they wished. V'lachein. So, therefore, גם אחרי הפורקן שפעלו מרדכי ואסתר לישראל בתפילתם ועבודתם, עדיין היו בני ישראל במצב של עבדי אחשוורוש, וכל עיקר דאגתו היה בעד מצבם ברוחניוס שיהיו חופשיים מן החטא. Even after they prayed and saved the Jews, as Chazal indicate, were still living as Akate Avdei Achashverosh knew. They were still living under the control of Achashverosh. Even after the Gzeir was over, even after they defended themselves, even after the holiday of Purim was celebrated, they were still Avadim. They were still encumbered in this exile. And yet, Mordechai and Esther weren't bothered by that. All they were worried about in that moment was the spiritual freedom, the freedom from sin. So freedom is bilti mugbal. They could be anything. They could be whatever kind of Jews they wanted to be despite the exile. And in the midst of that freedom, the achievement that they were supposed to get to was to be free from sin, to be pure, to be zach, to be tahor. Both senses of the word. Mor duror, this myrrh which was free to be as they wished. And mara dachya, the myrrh that was dach, that was zach, that was pure, in the sense that the freedom that they had to observe how they wished was supposed to enable them to be free of sin, to observe in the perfect way exactly k'mitzuv aleim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the amkus of the onkelos and what it adds to the translation over here. Now we can go back to our original question. So we understand now, the concept of mor duror. We understand what Targum Onkelos adds with maradachya. We understand now why these two things were related. These two words, mar dror, maradachya, were related to the character of Mordechai. It's the exact same qualities that he exhibits are characterized by those words, dror and dachya. And of course, it sounds like Mordechai, mar dachya, more duror, Mordechai. So it has a similar sound to it. But now we can answer our final question. Why does the Gemara even say Mordechai min Torah minayin? Why does it ask for a reference to Mordechai in the Torah? She'elas the Gemara shepu'ulas Mordechai hayta la'ora sa'am l'tshuva b'tzom misveh l'batal s'gzeres haman arasha eifo near meses b'Torah. It's not asking where we have a reference to Mordechai's name in the Torah. It's asking to where we find this quality of Mordechai, that he was able to rouse the people, inspire the people to be better Jews even in the midst of Galus. Where do we find that concept in the Torah? Where does he have a model for that in the Torah, for that kind of behavior and inspiration? V'amru shemerumezet b'targum shemilas mar deror b'maradachya shemavad shalosh targum karav l'shem Mordechai gam meramez al hisnaguso shel Mordechai kitzadek hador. It's in these words, maradachya, the fact that Mordechai was like the myrrh, in the sense that it is unencumbered, it's free to observe how it wished, so too Mordechai instilled that in the people. Not only did he instill that they were free as dror, but dachya, as in pure. The fact that their freedom to observe how they wish could lead them to live pure lives, lives free of sin, lives unencumbered by the sins that would spiritually collapse them and spiritually box them in. We should all be inspired, although Purim is only a couple of weeks away, we should all be inspired by the Purim Katan we had this past week, by the Parsha of the Mor Deror, to find ourselves and believe in ourselves with that spirit of Mordechai, that we are also unencumbered. We are free to observe how we wish and in whatever way we wish, and that is what enables us to reach the Maradachya, the purity level that we aspire to. And if we can do that, if we can achieve that, then perhaps we can achieve a greater closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and a greater achievement of the goals of His Torah and mitzvahs in our world. Shabbat Shalom.